Taylor Swift isn't just a singer. She's an economic force. In 2023 alone, analysts estimated that Taylor Swift generated nearly $5 billion in economic impact for the United States. Her Eras Tour became the first tour in history to cross $2 billion in revenue, turning stadium concerts into a global financial machine. But what makes this story even more fascinating is this. Taylor Swift became a billionaire without building a makeup brand, fashion empire, or tech startup. Just music. But before the billion-dollar empire, came a betrayal that nearly changed everything. A deal stripped Taylor of the one thing she valued most: ownership of her own music. Instead of losing, she turned that moment into one of the greatest business comebacks in entertainment history. Taylor Swift was just 14 years old when most teenagers were worried about school, friends, and weekend plans. But Taylor had a completely different obsession. She wanted one thing only: to become a country music artist. At the time, country music was dominated by established stars and traditional voices. The industry was conservative, competitive, and difficult to break into. And Taylor was an outsider. A teenage girl from Pennsylvania with big dreams and no industry connections. She had already started writing songs at an unusually young age. Not because someone told her to, but because songwriting became her way of processing emotions, relationships, and everyday experiences. While other kids kept diaries, Taylor turned her feelings into lyrics. She would travel regularly to Nashville with demo CDs in hand, knocking on doors and trying to get noticed. She walked into record labels hoping someone would listen. Most of them didn't. Executives saw her as too young, too inexperienced, and too risky. The market was already crowded. Labels weren't interested in investing in an unknown teenager. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. But Taylor was unusually persistent. Instead of waiting for an opportunity, her family made a decision that changed everything. They relocated to Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside Nashville, so Taylor could be closer to the center of country music. It was a huge gamble. Her parents were effectively restructuring their lives around a dream that had no guarantees. No contract. No fame. No certainty. Just belief. Taylor continued performing anywhere she could. Local events. Songwriter showcases. Small venues. Any place that gave her a microphone and an audience. But what made her different wasn't just her voice. It was her writing. Unlike many artists her age, Taylor was writing songs from the perspective of an actual teenager. Real emotions. Real insecurities. Real heartbreak. Real awkwardness. She wasn't trying to sound older or more polished. She was authentic. And that authenticity slowly started attracting attention. In 2004, she signed a songwriting deal with Sony/ATV, becoming one of the youngest songwriters ever signed by the company. It was a major milestone, but not yet the breakthrough she wanted. Taylor still needed a record deal. That moment finally arrived when music executive Scott Borchetta was launching a new label called Big Machine Records. He saw something others had missed. Not just talent. Potential. He recognized that Taylor wasn't simply another singer trying to get discovered. She was building a direct emotional connection with an audience that the industry had largely ignored: teenage girls who wanted music that actually sounded like their lives. In 2006, at just 16 years old, Taylor Swift released her debut single. It was the beginning of a career that would eventually reshape the music business itself. By 2013, Taylor Swift had already conquered country music. She had multiple hit albums, sold-out tours, Grammy Awards, and one of the most loyal fan bases in the industry. From a business perspective, she had already won. Most artists in that position would have stayed exactly where they were. Taylor did the opposite. She made a decision that many believed could destroy everything she had built. She walked away from country music. It wasn't a small adjustment or gradual shift. It was a complete reinvention. Country music had made Taylor famous, but it also came with limitations. The audience was narrower. The creative expectations were stricter. And as Taylor evolved personally and artistically, she no longer wanted to stay inside a box that no longer fit her. So she made a bold bet. She would go fully pop. Not half pop. Not country pop. A complete transition. For any artist, this was risky. But for Taylor, the stakes were even higher. She wasn't just changing sound. She was challenging her own brand. Critics questioned whether her country audience would abandon her. Industry insiders wondered if mainstream pop listeners would fully accept her. If the transition failed, years of momentum could collapse. But Taylor had a different vision. She partnered closely with producers like Max Martin and Shellback to create a sound that was sharper, cleaner, and globally commercial. The result was 1989. Released in October 2014, the album was named after her birth year and symbolized a new version of Taylor Swift. More confident. More polished. More strategic. The album delivered hit after hit. Shake It Off. Blank Space. Style. Bad Blood. Wildest Dreams. These weren't just successful songs. They were global pop events. 1989 sold over 1.2 million copies in its first week in the United States alone, making Taylor the first artist to have 3 albums sell more than 1 million copies in a single week. The risk had paid off. Massively. Taylor didn't just survive the genre shift. She dominated it. 1989 won Album of the Year at the Grammy Awards, making Taylor the first woman to win the award twice for 2 different genres. That moment changed everything. Taylor was no longer seen as just a country star with crossover appeal. She became a global pop powerhouse. A brand. A business empire. And one of the most commercially powerful artists in the world. What looked like a dangerous career gamble had actually become one of the smartest reinventions in modern music history. Success had made Taylor Swift one of the biggest stars in the world. But in 2019, she faced a problem bigger than charts, awards, or sold-out tours. Ownership. Taylor discovered that Big Machine Records, the label that had launched her career, had been sold to music executive Scooter Braun. The deal reportedly gave Scooter control over Taylor's master recordings, the original versions of the first 6 albums that built her career. For most fans, this sounded like a technical business issue. It wasn't. Masters are power. They control licensing, streaming revenue, film placements, and long-term financial value. In simple terms, someone else now owned the most important work of Taylor's life. Songs she had written. Albums she had spent years building. Music that had defined an entire generation. And according to Taylor, she was never given a fair opportunity to buy them herself. She publicly described the situation as one of the most painful experiences of her career. Not just because of money, but because it represented something deeper. Loss of control. For years, artists had signed deals early in their careers without fully understanding the long-term consequences. Taylor decided she would not accept that system. Instead of simply complaining, she made an almost unthinkable business move. She announced that she would re-record her first 6 albums. The strategy was radical. By creating new versions of her old music, Taylor could shift fan attention, streaming numbers, and licensing demand away from the original masters. Essentially, she was competing against her own catalog. And winning. Beginning with Fearless, Taylor's version, in 2021, she started systematically reclaiming her work. Then came Red, Taylor's version. Followed by Speak Now in 1989, Taylor's version. Fans fully supported the mission. Streaming platforms, brands, filmmakers, and even casual listeners began choosing Taylor's version over the originals. What could have been a career-ending dispute became one of the smartest strategic moves in entertainment history. Taylor transformed a private industry conflict into a global movement about artist ownership. It wasn't just about getting albums back. It was about rewriting the rules. For decades, record labels held most of the power. Taylor challenged that model in public. And millions watched it happen in real time. She turned betrayal into leverage, loss into strategy, and a business dispute into one of the most successful comebacks the music industry has ever seen. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding everything, on your own terms.